Jamal Niaz here at For the Love of Horror with Monopoly Events with an absolute horror icon, Heather Donahue. This is absolutely amazing to have the Blair Witch Project cast here, Eduardo and Michael here. You know, after so many years, the film still holds up as one of the most terrifying films in the history of the genre. Just what's it like hearing fans' reactions and their stories about how they've shown their kids the film, how their mothers and fathers showed them the film? It really has been passed through the generations and will continue to be.
I mean, that's kind of amazing because I think in the beginning, like there was some thought that like, oh, it's really the marketing that made this film so successful. And like, I think that was part of it in the beginning, but for it to endure 25 years later, that kind of speaks to something else, a more visceral and sincere experience that I think is something that the cast really brought to it. That's why I mean, there's no greater gig than just going somewhere lovely like Manchester and sitting behind a table and having people say nice things to you all day. Like, I mean, it's pretty sweet.
Complimenting your work.
Yeah, it's really not a tough gig. Like, I do a lot of much tougher things in my life. So, like, this is actually a little bit like a vacation, as everyone in my very small town was like, have fun on vacation. I'm like, I'm working. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not. And I'm like, all right, fine. Yeah, I'm really not. And so I love it. It's wonderful for people to get a chance to, like, share their stories. It's great to make a little money. I won't lie to you about that. That's also great. It's great to like get some bath bombs from Lush UK before I go home. Like the ones in the US are not as good, I gotta tell you. Like, and it's yeah, what's not to love? I had some delicious Korean barbecue last night. I have a friend who lives in Manchester that I'm gonna get to see that I never get to see in her home turf.
And it's sunny, and it always rains
And
here.
can you believe how sunny it is today?
I think you brought it over with you.
It is unreal. Like, yeah, I was expecting it's going to just be drizzly every day. I was ready for it. And I'm like, I can't believe we're inside all day when it is glorious outside. Yeah.
So good. I was speaking to Eduardo before, and he said, you know, I was talking about like the mean feat he took on with that, you know, a true innovator as a filmmaker, and yourself, an innovator as an actor as well. Because he was saying, look, I don't think that Steven Spielberg, as a hero of his, he doesn't think that Steven Spielberg could have done what he did with that project. Large budget director like him, working on improv, they didn't know what the ending was going to be till they were pretty much shooting it. And yourself, like, I don't think like the great actors working today, at the height of their powers, they couldn't do what you and Michael did. Like improv, you were out in the woods on your own, following GPS trackers, self-shooting as well, which is very, very difficult. And also, you didn't know that you come into a house at the end as well, which is absolutely nuts.
Right, well...
Oh, Michael didn't. Maybe you did.
No, we didn't, but they did put us in a car and drive us to a different state park.
Right.
So we knew we were going to, like, whatever the finale location was, we had a pretty good idea that it was going to be creepy and it was going to be that night. So, like, we had time to, like, brace ourselves. They asked us not to speak to each other in the car on the way there, so we didn't really speak or anything like that. And they just had, the tent was already set up for us. And, I mean, honestly, shooting it... Like, I don't know, I actually think most actors would revel in the opportunity to do something like that. I think part of the reason I really wanted to do it, even though everybody was like, this is crazy, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't be going into the woods with a bunch of guys you don't know. And I'm like, fair point.
Haunted woods as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I had a hunting knife. I had over-prepared for the job. But... You know, there's something very remarkable about, like Mike and I were talking about this last night, like there's something very remarkable about having actors be in control of a story like that. You never get that. I've never had that experience since, you know, where if we didn't like what we did, we just shot it again. We just did something else. Like, but we had total sovereignty over what we were shooting. Like, as long as we shot the scene that they wrote in each of our notes, like then we could shoot whatever else we wanted, whatever else we felt would be of benefit to the story, or whatever else we just thought would be fun or interesting, or yeah. So it was a very special experience. I mean, honestly, what was scary, was what happened afterwards. Like once it came out, and you got to really see what the industry was like. You got to see what money does to people. You got to see a lot of things that were far more terrifying than a pile of rocks or a couple of twigs, you know. strung together from a tree. You know, it's really nature is pretty generous. It's human beings you have to look out for.
I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, the pile of rocks and the twigs. The rocks were placed at the edge of your tent by, I'm guessing, Eduardo or anyone else that was... Yeah. They were just messing with you, just trying to like play tricks on you, like rustling in the bushes, and they were playing stuff through speakers to like wake you up in the middle of the night. And you know, when you had to wake up in the middle of the night and you're obviously tired, you're confused, they were rationing your food as well to a certain degree as well, and you're like waking up, right, I've got to go into acting mode now. I've got to shoot. What was that experience like? I
mean, honestly, that was super fucking annoying because we were actors, and so we were able to like, you know, can't we do this at some normal time? Can we do this? Can we do this soon after dark? Do we have to really do it at 3 o'clock in the morning? Because I think it's actually going to go better if we do it when it just gets dark. And we actually ended up shooting that one sequence where we're running out of the woods. We ended up shooting that like 8 different times in the middle of the night because the camera kept losing registration, and so we had to go back and do it again and again and again and again. So, you know, as much as it was like, you know, not everything was done in one take. So we definitely had to rely on our actual skills. I think maybe Dan and Ed, kind of being first-time directors, didn't know how much trust they could put into actors. So it was nice that it was Josh and Mike and I out there, and that we did have a lot of trust in each other, and we did continue to look out for each other. Like we had a code word taco when we had to break scenario and get back into it. So we were like, we tried to stay in character most of the time, but we certainly had clear communication with each other that we were looking out for each other as actors as well, and then could go kind of in and out of the scene.
I mean, you absolutely nailed your audition by all accounts. You were given a scenario as to plead your case as to why you should be let off on parole, and you just said, I shouldn't be, with like a deathly stare that shook everyone to the core, because no one else said that. They were all trying to plead their case, but you didn't. Do you kind of look back on that moment now and think to yourself, it probably didn't seem that much of a landmark moment, but it is. It is a huge moment. No one else thought outside the box like you did, and that was portrayed on film as well. I
think something that came out in that interview, which I think was essential to playing this part, is like the courage to be unlikable. I mean, that to say like,
drop them all in it.
To say like, I don't think you should let me out because I would do it again. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think most people, and that's actually something I work on with now with women as a coach, like how not to be, how limiting being traditionally pleasing is, and how living your life fully and relentlessly, being fully alive, actually requires you to let go of some people pleasing. And I feel very lucky to have been born very indifferent to being pleasing.
I mean, you all have your moments in the film. Like I said, that twist where Michael is revealed that he threw away the map. You obviously didn't know that was, and that wasn't even in the script. No, Eduardo said that was not part of the plan whatsoever. Were there ever any moments where, you know, you're angry in the film, but in real life you're actually like seething with rage? You're like, you've had enough. Like you're running on a low gas tank, you're tired, you're hungry, like you just don't want to be there.
Well, there were several days where it was raining so much that we just bailed. We went to somebody's house and we're like we communicated with them on the radio. We're like, we're not doing this. Like we are actors, and so we don't need this level of discomfort to do this job. Like, so fuck off. You know, we're done. And then they put us back in the next day when the rain had ceased a little bit. I think, like, you know, I remember one time I was playing this role, Deirdre of the Sorrows, and when I was playing the role, which is like a really big, like there's a lot of grief, keening, like it's a crazy role, and my like eczema came back during the run of that show. Because I was going physiologically, I was experiencing all those things. So yes, it's like, for me, acting is like a surrender to whatever experience the story requires. So yes, we were very surrendered to that experience, but we were also shooting in a park that's only for day use. So we had like families hiking by and people biking by. So it wasn't, we were never like, alone. We were never alone. Like we had to like stop shooting because a family was walking by, and like we looked ridiculous because we have these backpacks on in a day use park. Do you know what I mean? So there was still plenty of suspension of disbelief. And, I certainly wish we never had used our real names. Like, that would have been much better, I think, for all of us if that had not happened and we had the character names we auditioned for. But, it is what it is. And I'm and here we are today, 25 years later. So that's curious and odd. In some ways, I wish I had a time machine so I could go back and see what my life would have looked like without it, because it would have been completely different. And I am definitely curious as to what that would have looked like.
I mean, watching the ending on the big screen for the first time, what was that experience like? And it's very ambiguous, the ending. Even Eduardo himself said there's so many different ways to look at it and read it as an audience and as a viewer. What was that experience like watching it with a crowd for the first time for yourself?
The only time I saw it with a crowd was at Sundance. I never went to see it in the movies.
Yeah. The midnight showing was that one.
Yeah. I don't know. I had really mixed feelings. I mean, I knew I was alive. So there was part of me that's like, I don't know if this is really going to sell. I don't know if this really works or not.
Because they're trying to play it as a true story.
Yeah. And a lot of people walked out of that screening and a lot of people loved it. Blair Witch was divisive from the first screening. People either loved it or they hated it. And so I didn't know how that would actually play out in the world. And I certainly didn't expect it to play out that we were going to be personally part of that polarity. Like, oh, I hate this movie and I hate you. Do you know what I mean? Why aren't you dead? Can I have my money back? Like all those kinds of things that kind of came up at that time, which was a lot to absorb as like a 24, 25-year-old, like just suddenly in this spotlight that we were really not prepared for. Like I had an 84 Toyota Celica at the time that, broke down under a billboard with my face on it on La Cienega. So I had like no money. And yet there was my face on a billboard and I was part of this thing that was like a huge success. And I had no way to protect myself. I was still living in a shitty neighborhood in Hollywood in my $600 a month apartment, So I was like straddling these two worlds and kind of taking the backlash from a point of view where I had really no protection. So that made that whole time, that was the scariest bit of this whole thing. And that took the longest time to absorb and metabolize, I think.
And what did you think of Eduardo's decision to not show The Witch? Because that's proved to be the height of the film's success. You're always scared of the unknown as a viewer. Like you're scared
as a human being.
As a human being, and I'm more scared of the tension, the build up to a jump scare.
100%.
You want the release, don't you? So what did you make of it?
There was never any intention to show The Witch, and I think that was brilliant. Like nature is the witch. Do you know what I mean? It's like these like all of us, we're so divorced from the natural world. And that's a big part of our problem, that we have no capacity to really be with the mystery, such as it is.
The selfie shot, from your perspective, the monologue of you confessing, that's one of the most iconic scenes in the history of horror. Did you realise, I'm guessing you didn't realise after you shot it, because
I did. I gave myself a high five. I definitely gave myself a high five. I was like, I went for it. I went for it. There was nothing was held back. I was like, whatever I came here to do, I was like, I just did it right there.
That encapsulates the film. That scene is shown on the poster.
Oh no, I knew I nailed that. Yeah. I knew I nailed that 100%.
Amazing.
I went back into the tent and I was just like,
yeah. It's absolutely iconic. Well, if someone put together a top 10 list of shots and scenes from horror, that would definitely be right up there.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's been a pleasure.
It felt like when the snot was running out of my nose, I was like, no one has seen this before. This has never been done.
It's like, I'm not going to wipe. This needs to go on the camera.
The world is ready for full ugly cry.
Did you happen to see Scary Movie's spoof of that scene, by the way?
No. I saw tons of spoofs when it came out, but no, I never saw a Scary Movie.
They did like a spoof of it where there was just like floods of snot.
Yeah,
floods of snot.
Yeah, exactly. Because, don't we all look like that when we ugly cry? Yeah, we do.
For sure.
Yeah, we do.